Hey guys, Jerry here, welcome. Today's video is going to be awesome. I've been looking forward to doing this for some time now at the request of many of you who've been asking me about running shoes. So today's video, we are going to, I want you to sit back, relax. This is going to be a little bit of a longer one because I'm going to be showing you some shoes. We're going to look at how to choose shoes, what to look out for, and it's going to be very informative. So let's get started. So I've got 3 different running shoes here. I've got, again, I'm not promoting any particular brands, although I might. These are traditional kind of running shoes. These are kind of an old school Adidas marathon shoe. That's what they're called, the Marathon 10. And I initially bought these because at U of T we were Adidas, so I got Adidas to, you know, keep it uniform with our tracksuits and everything. But I'm going to talk about these in a second. I also have my Nike Frees. These are Nike Frees Free 5.0s. I'll tell you about the difference with Nike Frees. I've had these for now maybe 2.5 years. I love these shoes. And most recently, about 6 weeks ago, I finally got some Vibram 5 fingers, and I'm going to talk about these and why I absolutely love these for a lot of different purposes. So again, sit back, grab a green juice. We're going to get into the details of these shoes in a second. So I'm going to kind of lay the foundation for this talk by saying that the movement with running shoes, and you'll see this in any store you go to now, is moving towards a barefoot running shoe. And that would be closer to something like this, the Vibrams, or the Nike Frees. And you know, I'll give credit to Nike. They were really one of the first companies to come out with more of a barefoot type of running shoe, and now all the other brands are pretty much copying them with their own form of, you know, barefoot running. So let's talk about let's go back to the basics and let's look at a very structured, lots of cushioning, lots of support type of running shoe. And this is not even that, okay? If you go to a lot of running stores or any kind of shoe store, you'll see that the higher priced shoes, you know, the Asics, the Sauconys, a lot of them, very bulky type of shoes, they have a lot of cushioning, a lot of support. And that's what they try to sell you on. They're like, well, you know, if you're doing a lot of running, you need that kind of support and that cushioning to absorb the force and blah, blah, blah. So here's something I learned in biomechanics when I was in university, and thanks to our professor, who was, he had done some consulting with different brands, and he actually told us, one of our assignments was to develop a shoe or a product. In our case, we developed a shoe that helps you jump higher. We were talking to him about, you know, do these brands actually do a lot of research in the shoes that they're developing? And he had said from his experience that they don't. A lot of times they're putting out shoes based on what they think people want. So there's not a lot of research, not a lot of science behind a lot of these running shoes. So a typical running shoe that you're going to pay $200 for in a running store is a very structured, lots of cushioning type of shoe. Now, one of the first things you want to do is take it through a twist test, which is pretty much what I call it. So if you take this shoe here and you try to twist it like this, okay, this has a little bit more structure, and actually probably not as much structure as some other bulky running shoes that you might find. But if you can twist, or if you cannot twist the shoe, that's not a very good barefoot type of shoe, right? I mean, if you compare that to the Vibram, right, which like you can twist around and wring out, this is absolutely no support, and we'll talk about why that's important in a second. So your typical running shoe is very structured, very supportive, does not allow a lot of give, you know, even this way, right? Even going into flexion through the sole is very minimal, okay? And the reason that I would recommend you start moving away from these types of shoes is because they do not allow your foot to do what it's supposed to do, right? And naturally, if you think back to the way the human body is supposed to move, you know, back in the day, we're all barefoot, right? We're all barefoot, walking on the grass, and as a result of that, the foot naturally strengthens, right? It strengthens the tendons and all those intrinsic muscles underneath the sole of your foot, you know, between the toes. Those are all very important to give you a sense of proprioception, right? That stability, that balance. And that's a very important thing that we do not get with these very structured running shoes. So, you know, it doesn't matter if you're older, younger, if you got back pain or if you got knee pain, and you know, there's this whole thing about, we believe that we need to put a lot more cushioning in so that we're gonna get more support. It's all bullshit. It's part of my French there. It's all BS. So the typical running shoe, I would move away from that. Another thing I want to talk about here is the size of the heel. This is another reason why barefoot running, barefoot walking, barefoot shoes in general are much better. If you look at the size of the heel there, okay, this is about, I don't know, that's probably about an inch, just over an inch. Now the problem with having such a big heel or a big sole is that it alters the structure and the biomechanics of your posture and your body when you're walking, running, standing, okay? So it shifts the way your hips are aligned, and over time that puts a lot more strain on your back, your hamstrings, and literally just leads its way up the body. So that's why moving away from a big heel to literally a flat shoe is a much better alternative and a more natural alternative, okay? So this is our first example. It's a typical kind of very structured, very supportive, your more expensive running shoe at a running store, okay? Or a shoe store. Actually, the one thing I will point out on this shoe as well is you'll notice on the back of this heel, it's kind of a lip. That's called a heel flare. And the problem with this, and maybe it was designed to help runners, I'm not too sure, but the problem with this is it actually creates a big lever from your shin. So I don't know if I'm going to be able to explain this well, but essentially when you contact the floor, this is going to be your first point of contact. This puts a huge lever now, so about, whatever the size of my shoe is, it puts a huge lever on the rest of my shin and the muscles along the front of my shin that are going to pull those muscles so that I can propel my body forward. So a heel flare on a shoe, not a great idea. You want to steer clear of that. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. Let's move on to the next running shoe, which is, it's been one of my favorites for a long time, and this is pretty much my all-purpose shoe. But I need to warn you, right? We're talking about a straightforward motion here, okay? So if you're looking at a running shoe, we're not talking about cross trainers, and we're not talking about lateral support. If you're playing tennis, these shoes would not apply. So we're talking about a straight forward and back movement, walking, jogging, sprinting, okay? Because, as I said, right, this type of shoe has absolutely no type of support, no lateral support, and that's great for running, but not lateral movements, okay? So you don't want to be doing cross training and that kind of stuff with these type of shoes. So the Nike Free, I really enjoyed this. This is a 5.0, and basically the 5.0 is the second generation, I think, after the 3.0, and unfortunately Nike has gone to the 7.0, and that's why I'm not buying any more Nike Frees, because now what they're doing is the 5.0 represents literally the size of the sole or the heel. So the 3.0 was a little bit thinner, 5.0 a little bit bigger, 7.0 even bigger. So they're trying to get more heel support, more cushioning in there. I don't know why. I don't personally like the new ones, so that's why I'm sticking with this one. And again, if we look at the twist test, right, it's just there's very little structure to it. I can literally fold this right together. That's great, because now it's allowing my foot to do more of what it's supposed to do naturally. And if you wear these for the first time, you'll find that your foot inside the shoe, it just kind of moves around. It's kind of finding its way. It's doing what it needs to do to grip, to propel you, to work those intrinsic muscles that you don't work when your foot is in a cast like these shoes provide, okay? That's essentially the way you can look at it. These big bulky shoes are like a cast for your foot. And a good friend of mine who I'm actually going to be interviewing on the topic of orthotics very shortly, he's a sport chiropractor, brilliant guy, and we're going to talk a little bit more about this topic, but also about orthotics. And he was saying that he's worked with several pro athletes, and one of them was a wide receiver in the CFL, the Canadian Football League. And this is a guy who was very explosive, powerful, all that great stuff. But he had absolutely, there was a couple fundamental issues with his biomechanical, the way he was biomechanically moving. I mean, he was very explosive, very fast, but he had an Achilles tendon issue on both sides, both legs. The problem, as he found out, was that he had absolutely no stability and strength in his feet. And over time, as they strengthened the feet, all of that pretty much got a lot better. So it just goes to show you that our first point of contact with movements, after we finish crawling, is walking, right? So that first point of contact is the foot to the floor, And when we look at a lot of things nowadays, like hip problems, back problems, a lot of that can be prevented by proper biomechanics, obviously strengthening the core and different muscles, but also looking at proper footwear. Okay, so the Nike Frees I've been using for a long time now. They're my personal, I would say my favorite shoe for longer distance running. And as of about 6 weeks ago, I just got my first pair of Vibrams, whatever you want to call them. And these are really cool. They're like, if you've never seen these before, they're like gloves, right? They're like gloves, individual toes. You can literally put your hand in there and it would be like having a glove on. So this shoe has nothing, like there's nothing, like you can crumple this up, there's very little structure. This is actually the running version, this is the running shoe of the Vibrams. The Vibrams were used or developed as a barefoot shoe, almost like an aqua sock for paddling sports, for basic walking. And this, believe it or not, this one actually has more cushioning or more sole structure than their other walking or classic brand or their classic models. So this has like a 4mm sole, I think, and that just allows the foot, again, because if you're running, you're going to be going through, you're going to be exerting greater ground reaction forces through your body. So having some type of structure and support does help. Now, here's what I would recommend with the Vibrams. Right, the Vibrams I love because, again, like there's absolutely no sole here. So the first thing you're going to notice is that your posture becomes a lot better with this. And one of the things that we've noticed with a lot of our clients using Vibrams is that they've had shin splints, back issues, literally gone away in the space of a week or two just walking with these shoes. That's how powerful this stuff is when we're talking about biomechanics. And when you look at step after step after step, if you build that up over time, that makes a huge difference. So barefoot is the way to go, guys. Okay? So very little sole, very little heel. So again, it's just aligning your body a lot more effectively. Now, the other thing that's really cool about these is that, again, there's the foot, okay, because each toe is individual here, it's allowing the foot to move naturally. So in a shoe, okay, the toes are kind of wedged together, right? So they wedge together near the top of the shoe. So that doesn't allow the natural spread of your foot, which should naturally happen if you're going barefoot. Okay, if you were walking barefoot on the grass, your toes would naturally spread to absorb the force and then recoil to propel you forward. These shoes allow you to do that much more effectively than any other closed-toe shoe. So that's the other thing I really like about these. So I would recommend anyone really wear these. I don't care if you have flat feet. I'm not too sure how these kind of stand yet. Again, this interview that I'll be doing with my friend Rob will hopefully give us some more insight into that. But if you have a neutral arch or a high arch, from my experience, I have a high arch, these shoes work wonders. So here's what I'd recommend if you're using Vibrams for the first time. What you're going to find, the first thing you're going to find is, I would recommend that you do not go running first thing when you put these on. Walk around for a day or two, just get the feel back, and you're going to find that you'll just naturally have your body weight moving forward over top your feet a little bit more. So what's cool about these is that, I may have talked about this in the past, is it allows you to really to focus more on a forefoot type of running stride or walking stride even, as opposed to the heel toe. Okay, so when you're doing a lot of this heel toe stuff, what's happening is that your leg is a lot further out in front of you, so it acts like a brake. It literally just like stops your body and propels you over, and that puts a lot of stress and a lot of force through your legs, through your back, and everything. These, and when you're walking barefoot, and if you can test it out by just going walking on the grass barefoot, is that you tend to have more of your body weight going forward over your foot. So the leg is not as outstretched in front of you, and that's a good thing because now your muscles are doing the work as opposed to passive structures like your heel and your bones. So that's another great thing about going barefoot. So I would recommend walking for about the first 1 to 2 days. Just get a feel for these shoes. You can wear them in the house, and they're great. I mean, if you wear sandals or socks, you just put these on, and they're a little bit more effective to walk around. When you start running with these, here's what I would advise, and this is based on my own experience, is I would recommend starting off on grass, okay? Because barefoot running is meant to be on grass or a softer surface. And so I'd recommend starting off on grass if you have a soccer field around your house, or just a nice long, trimmed, nicely manicured lawn. That would be ideal with no potholes. very little divots, right? Because it's gonna take some time for your foot to start getting that muscle structure back and that proprioception. So if you can get a nice flat surface, grass would be best. That's the way to do it. And when you start jogging, okay, just nice and light, just kind of go with what's natural to you, right? At slower speeds, you'll most likely end up more towards the back of the shoe, more towards the back of your foot, and that's fine, okay? You don't necessarily have to be landing on the ball of your foot all the time, especially at slower speeds, and here's why. At slower speeds, if you always land on the balls of your feet, so always kind of forefoot running, that puts a huge eccentric load on your Achilles tendon and your calves, and that's when you're gonna get some really sore Achilles tendons and calves for several days, and it'll take you, every time you go for, you're not going to want to go out for a run because your calves are just so tight and so sore. So if you have to land towards the back of your foot initially, if you're at slower speeds, that's fine. Just understand that you're not getting as much cushioning, okay? So as you speed up, the transition, towards a sprint, for instance, will be moving towards the forefoot, towards the ball of the foot for your landing. So you will probably get some soreness in the Achilles, right? The lower back part of your lower leg, and that's fine. Okay, the best thing to do is just kind of put these back on, go for a walk the next day, give it a couple days to get through that soreness. So you want to build up your volume with these. Start off, maybe go for a couple minutes, nice light jogging, then walk it out. Next time you go back out, go for a little bit more distance, a little bit more time, whatever you're using. Same thing. So you want to gradually build this up. It's like doing push-ups. You want to do, if you've never done push-ups in your life, start off by doing 1, and then do 2, and then do 3. The same thing with these. Start off nice and slowly based on what you can do aerobically as a runner, right? And then obviously muscularly how you feel before and after and during these sessions. So start off on grass with the Vibrams if you can, and work up from there very, very slowly. After you've conditioned your feet a little bit more with these, then you can start moving to something like a treadmill. And I actually use these on the treadmill quite often because I find them very effective, and I just like running in them. So I'll move from grass to the treadmill next. Get them used to running on a treadmill. Again, it's a little bit softer surface than concrete, or even like a rubberized track would be perfect for these. It would be a great example of a place where you'd want to move to next from grass to a rubberized track. That would be great for the Vibrams. Once you've done that, once you feel your calves and your tendons and those lower part of the leg have really strengthened and your feet feel stronger and more balanced, then you can start moving towards a solid surface like concrete or pavement. And again, just kind of feel it out, right? If you have to build up the distance, don't go crazy, don't go for a 10K run first time wearing these. Give it some time, build up that distance, and so your body can adapt as you go forward. But I can tell you that once you get used to these, you'll never want to go back to a basic running shoe ever again, because your body's going to feel so much better. Your running is going to become much more efficient. You're going to become a better runner. You're going to have fewer injuries, after that initial muscle soreness. You're actually not going to get as tired because now that you're running more biomechanically efficient, higher stride rate turnover, and studies have shown this, that you're at the same intensity, your heart rate is lower when you're running with better running efficiency or running economy. So really, really cool stuff. I'm going to mention one more thing about the Vibrams, or the Vibrams. I use these for all of my all of my workouts in the gym. I use these all the time. Okay, so this morning I went to the gym, I did some deadlifts, and deadlifts are an example of an exercise that you need to be doing in a flat shoe, and that's why you see a lot of these Olympic lifters with these very kind of flat block type of shoes. And that's because one of the reasons, if you have a heel lift, if your sole is elevated, that's going to shift everything with the movement. And so squats, deadlifts, all of that stuff, lunge walks, anything, do it barefoot. Like even if you don't have Vibrams, go barefoot. Put some socks on, or at the very minimum in the gym, so your body can get that feel. The toes can really grip into the floor and work at stabilizing your body and strengthening itself through natural movement, okay? But here's the other great thing about these shoes, that they're only like 90 bucks, okay? So when you compare these shoes to these shoes, I paid almost $200 for these, $90 for the Vibrams, and that's something you really want to pay attention to, guys, because the whole running shoe industry is a bit of a farce, because the more expensive the shoe, a lot of times, the less the less likely I would recommend you use it. Let's just put it that way, okay? So you don't need to go for the bulky shoes, the high expensive, flashy, glossy ones. Don't even look at them. Just go to get a simple pair of these, get a simple pair of Nike Frees 3.0s or 5.0s. That's what I'd recommend. If you're really looking to prevent injuries and strengthen your feet, it's a great place to start. So I believe that's everything that we wanted to talk about. So again, the Vibrams are my first choice. Build into them, use them for your workouts in the gym, use them for jogging, running, whatever, walking around. They'll make a world of a difference for you. And once again, just a kind of a disclaimer, if you're doing any kind of cross training, any kind of lateral movements, don't use these shoes, right? Use something with a little bit more lateral support. And again, you know, I'll be testing out the Vibrams for different speed work things, lateral movements. I'll let you know how it goes. I'll let you know if it's recommended to use these. These ones maybe, more so than the Nike Frees, because you're actually getting more of a natural foot feel. So I'm gonna do some work with these on that lateral stuff. I'll see how it goes, and I'll make some recommendations based on that. But if you have any questions, just let me know below this video. And I'll be sure to ask these questions to our upcoming expert, Rob, who's a brilliant sport chiro. So we're going to have some really cool stuff coming on the back end of this to give you some really good information on more stuff on the running shoes, orthotics, how to strengthen your feet, all this really important stuff that you need to know about to be a better runner, a healthier individual, and to prevent injuries. So that's all for today. I'll see you soon.